So daily architecture or weekly architecture, just schedule-wise, seems like you rarely schedule certain types of things before noon your time. Could you speak to that and perhaps just tell the genesis story? Like how and when did you begin doing that? Because that's contraindicated if you're doing 80-hour weeks, right? So there was a transition.
Yeah, of course. That didn't really become a possibility until I was self-employed. And I think I started practicing it originally when I was writing Finding Ultra, because I needed quiet hours before work began to just be focused on that important thing. And I've just built upon it from there. So essentially, I'm early to bed, early to rise. I go to bed like around 9 and generally get up around sort of 5, between 5 and 6. And the early hours are really protected as my own time. So morning meditation, journaling, writing, creative projects, no meetings, no phone calls. Like certainly, like we're doing this podcast this morning, so I'll make exceptions, like we're doing this in the morning. But as a general rule, I try not to commit to anything outside of those practices for that initial phase of the day. And so after I finish those practices, then I do my training in the morning. And I try to get that done before I go into the workday.
How frequently would you say you succeed? And not to ever expect it to be 100%. I'm just curious what you would say it looks like. And when you get something, because we were talking about the death by 1,000 cuts earlier, when you get really tempting stuff, what do you do? Right? Like sometimes you make exceptions, but if you made all the exceptions, then the schedule wouldn't work, right? Because I'm sure you have people pitch stuff earlier in the day. So what would you say your hit rate is, and how do you contend with the temptations?
I would say outside of situations where I'm traveling, my hit rate's about 85%. So
that's high.
I'm pretty good. Yeah. And also the people that I generally work with, like all know this now. So it's less often that I'm asked to do things during those hours because they know. And I've gotten much better at just not agreeing to do stuff, conference calls, Zoom calls and stuff like that during that period of time. But if somebody's in, the UK or in a radically different time zone, like there's situations where it's like, okay, am I going to be the huge pain in the ass, or am I going to just make an exception? So
make them do the Zoom call at 11 p.m.
Yeah. Like I'm too much of a people pleaser for that. And that's the war that I'm always waging. Like the healthy boundary versus like the desire to be liked is like the battleground in my head. And so I'm pretty good about that. The death by 1,000 cuts shows up in other areas of my life, particularly like regarding stuff that isn't due or isn't going to happen for a long period of time. Like if it's far enough out on the calendar, I'll pretty much agree to anything. And, and then that day arrives and you're like, what am I doing? I'm never doing this again. And then the following week you're, reaping the same thing. So, that's like my Mount Everest right now. And listen, these are problems of abundance. They're the result of working very hard to create something that is interesting to people. And so you get offered cool stuff. And I want to take advantage of all the cool stuff. Like I know what it's like to not have people interested in having me involved in cool stuff, but at what cost, right? And it's really hard to do that. It's like, do you want to go do this amazing thing? You're like, 100% I do. But what are you really trying to accomplish? Where is your focus, vested? And calibrating those opportunities against the things that are most important in your life. And, I have 4 kids. Like I have other responsibilities outside of my professional responsibilities that are important to me. So I'm not always great at making those decisions, but I'd like to think that I'm getting a little bit better.